The game just got destroyed. Kendrick Lamar's secret weapon from 2009 surfaced, and it's brutal. A hidden diss track that documents every lie the game told. TDE's Punch just confirmed it. This changes everything. The receipts were there for 16 years, and nobody knew. Until now. This is career ending. Everybody thought they knew the story between Kendrick and the game. We heard the game's version 1,000 times. He claimed he discovered Kendrick, opened doors, wanted to sign him, put him on. That was the narrative repeated everywhere. The game positioned himself as some kind of West Coast mentor who helped shape Kendrick's rise. But right now, Punch from Top Dog Entertainment just dropped nuclear evidence that completely shatters that entire story. We're talking about a 6-minute confession track from April 2009 that most fans never heard. Kendrick documented the real story 16 years ago. The whole narrative is twisting because what Kendrick said back then destroys every single claim the game made. Let me break down exactly what's happening right now because this is insane. The track is called Last Real Nigga Alive, and it dropped on April 22nd, 2009. Kendrick was still an underground artist grinding in Compton. This wasn't some major label release. This was raw, unfiltered truth on a mixtape most people never heard. And Punch, Kendrick's mentor, who he literally called the Phil Jackson of his career, just publicly endorsed this track as the real documentation of what went down. Think about what that means. TDE's president is co-signing a 16-year-old track right now during this beef. That's not random, that's strategic warfare. So what does Kendrick actually say on this track? Let's get into the exact lyrics because they're absolutely devastating. Kendrick raps about giving his demo tape to the game's barber, Jamie, back when he was still in 12th grade. This kid was 17, 18 years old, dreaming of his big break, and he thought getting his music to the game could change everything. He waited, he hoped, and what happened? According to Kendrick's own words, either the game never responded or his partner came back with a message that cut deep. Game didn't like it. Imagine being a teenager with undeniable talent and getting rejected by someone you looked up to. That stays with you forever. But here's where it gets even crazier. Kendrick chronicles how the game eventually brought him on tour later. For a moment, there was hope again. Kendrick got to see what the big leagues looked like. He performed alongside the game. He thought maybe this was the beginning of something real. But then Kendrick drops this line that tells you everything. Shortly after, Game took us on tour. I love him for that, but right after, we didn't see him no more. The game disappeared, vanished, ghosted Kendrick completely after giving him that brief glimpse of success. And Kendrick documented all of it in 2009, years before he became the legend we know today. Now, fans online turned into full-blown investigators the moment this resurfaced. They're going through Kendrick's entire discography looking for other hidden references to the game. They're comparing timelines, cross-referencing interviews, pulling up old footage from 2009. Online detectives are slowing down every verse Kendrick ever recorded during that era, zooming in on every line that could be a subliminal shot. And folks online swear there are more tracks like this buried in Kendrick's catalog. They're saying he's been playing chess while everyone else played checkers. He documented his enemies' betrayals in real time and just waited for the perfect moment to let the world discover the truth. TMZ hasn't officially covered this yet, but the hip-hop blogs are going off. Social media is absolutely buzzing. Twitter detectives found that this track was part of a project Kendrick dropped before he even signed his major deal, back when he was still K-Dot, still hungry, still documenting every struggle, every setback, every person who doubted him or did him dirty. The game's whole narrative is built on lies. He's been telling the world for years that he wanted to sign Kendrick, that he saw his potential, that he helped him. But Kendrick's own testimony from 2009 proves the game rejected him when it mattered most. And now that Kendrick is the biggest rapper alive, the game wants to rewrite history and take credit. People are saying the game saw Kendrick's talent early and deliberately held him back. That's the conspiracy theory blowing up right now. The idea that the game recognized this kid was going to be something special and got scared, intimidated, jealous. So he distanced himself before Kendrick could eclipse him. And honestly, when you look at how things played out, that theory makes sense. Dr. Dre chose Kendrick. The entire West Coast rallied behind Kendrick. Kendrick became the face of California hip-hop, the title the game desperately wanted but can never truly claim. The game watched all of that happen from the sidelines because he fumbled the opportunity to be part of Kendrick's rise. Let's keep it real. This 6-minute track is a time capsule. Kendrick literally predicted this moment. He knew someday people would try to rewrite history, so he left the receipts on wax. That's generational level strategy. That's the mindset of someone who thinks 10 steps ahead. Kendrick wasn't just making music in 2009, he was building an archive of truth that would protect his legacy forever. Fans are comparing this to Tupac's hit 'em up level of destruction, except Kendrick did it 16 years before the actual beef popped off. He's been sitting on the ultimate trump card this entire time, and the game had no idea it existed. The implications here are massive. If Kendrick documented the game's betrayal in 2009, what else did he document? Who else is mentioned in his unreleased vault? How many other rappers is sitting on hidden tracks that could expose them? This is bigger than just the game. This is Kendrick showing the entire industry that he's been keeping receipts on everybody. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking into place and the psychology behind the game's behavior becomes crystal clear. We need to understand who the game was in 2009 versus who Kendrick was, and how that power dynamic has completely flipped in the most brutal way possible. Back in 2009, the game was still riding high off his early success. The documentary had established him as a West Coast heavyweight. Doctor's Advocate proved he could succeed without achieving it. He was one of the biggest names in California hip-hop. He had the connections, the reputation, the platform. Meanwhile, Kendrick was a nobody, just another teenager from Compton with a dream and a demo tape. The game held all the power in that dynamic. But here's what the game didn't count on: Kendrick's undeniable talent. Even back then, anyone who actually listened to K-Dot's early work could hear something special. The lyricism, the storytelling, the hunger, the technical skill, it was all there. So when the game received that demo tape through his barber Jamie, he had to have heard it. He had to have recognized what this kid was capable of. And that's exactly where the jealousy and fear started brewing. The game is a good rapper, but he's not a great rapper. He's never been considered one of the all-time lyrical killers. He built his career on name-dropping legends, writing beats hard, and inserting himself into every major rap beef to stay relevant. But Kendrick? Kendrick was different from day one. Kendrick had the potential to be legendary, and the game saw that. Think about it from the game's perspective. You're at the peak of your career, you're the face of the West Coast, and suddenly this teenager from your own city shows up with skills that might eventually surpass yours. What do? If you're secure in your legacy, you embrace that kid, you mentor him, you help him rise, because that's what real legends do. But if you're insecure, if you're worried about being replaced, if you're terrified of becoming irrelevant, you do exactly what the game did. You reject him. You distance yourself. You make sure he doesn't rise under your platform because you don't want to be associated with the person who eventually outshines you. That kind of insecurity is toxic, but it's also incredibly common in hip-hop. We've seen it before with older rappers feeling threatened by younger talent. The difference here is Kendrick documented it all, and now the receipts are public. Let's talk about what happened after that initial rejection. Kendrick didn't give up. He kept grinding. He connected with Top Dog Entertainment, a label that actually believed in him. TDE gave him the support, the resources, the creative freedom to develop into the artist he was meant to become. And when Kendrick started gaining momentum independently, when the buzz started building around this kid from Compton who could rap, the game suddenly wanted back in. That's when the game brought Kendrick on tour. But here's the key detail. This only happened after Kendrick was already rising. The game didn't help Kendrick when he was struggling. He didn't open doors when Kendrick needed the most. He only showed interest when Kendrick was already proving himself. And even then, it was short-lived. The game gave Kendrick a brief moment in the spotlight, then disappeared completely. That tells you everything about his intentions. It wasn't genuine mentorship, it was opportunism. And it gets worse for the game. While he was distancing himself from Kendrick, Dr. Dre was watching. Dre saw the same talent the game saw, but Dre had the confidence and legacy to embrace it. Dre brought Kendrick into the Aftermath family. Dre produced Good Kid, M.A.A.D. City. Dre gave Kendrick the cosign that the game was too scared to give. And that cosign changed everything. Kendrick went from underground mixtape rapper to Grammy-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning generational talent. He became the face of West Coast hip-hop. He became the critical darling, the commercial success, the cultural icon. He achieved everything the game wanted but could never fully attain. And the game had to watch it all happen, knowing he had the chance to be part of that story, but fumbled it because of his own insecurity. Now let's talk about the game's career trajectory since then. After 2009, the game's relevance started declining. His album sales dropped, his cultural impact diminished. He became known more for starting beefs with random rappers on social media than for his actual music. He went from being a legitimate West Coast star to being a nostalgia act, desperately trying to stay in the conversation. Meanwhile, Kendrick ascended to God-tier status. To Pimp a Butterfly became one of the most critically acclaimed albums in hip-hop history. Damn won a Pulitzer Prize. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers proved he could still innovate and challenge listeners. Kendrick became untouchable, and every single accolade Kendrick earned was a reminder to the game of what he could have been part of if he hadn't been so insecure back in 2009. Now let's talk about the career trajectory since then. After 2009, the game's relevance started declining. His album sales dropped, his cultural impact diminished. He became known more for starting beefs with random rappers on social media than for his actual music. He went from being a legitimate West Coast star to being a nostalgia act, desperately trying to stay in the conversation. Meanwhile, Kendrick ascended to God-tier status. To Pimp a Butterfly became one of the most critically acclaimed albums in hip-hop history. Damn won a Pulitzer Prize. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers proved he could still innovate and challenge listeners. Kendrick became untouchable, and every single accolade Kendrick earned was a reminder to the game of what he could have been part of if he hadn't been so insecure back in 2009. That's the motive. That's why the game has been so desperate to rewrite history. He can't accept that he missed his chance to be associated with greatness. He can't accept that his jealousy and fear caused him to reject the greatest rapper of this generation when that rapper was just a kid looking for help. So instead, he lies. He tells the world he wanted to sign Kendrick. He claims he opened doors. He tries to insert himself into Kendrick's origin story as a mentor figure, when the reality is he was an obstacle. Put all that together and it looks like the perfect recipe for this exact moment. The game's ego couldn't handle watching Kendrick surpass him, so he started lying to make himself feel better and stay relevant. But Kendrick had the receipts the entire time, 16 years of receipts, and now the world knows the truth. The streets are saying the game's entire post-2015 career has been one long, desperate attempt to stay relevant by attaching himself to bigger names and bigger beefs. He beefed with Meek Mill, he beefed with 6ix9ine, he inserted himself into the Drake versus Meek situation. He name-drops legends in every song like he's trying to borrow their greatness. And now, he's trying to claim credit for Kendrick Lamar's rise. The audacity is unbelievable. The delusion is staggering. And the karma is poetic.
But here's the part that really hits different when you step back and think about the human element of this story. We're not just talking about rap beef and ego battles. We're talking about a 17-year-old kid from Compton who had a dream and got rejected by someone he looked up to. That's a deeply personal pain that shaped who Kendrick became. Imagine being Kendrick in 2008, 2009. You're still in high school or just graduated. You're writing songs in your room, recording in makeshift studios, grinding on mixtapes nobody's hearing yet. You know you're talented. You know you have something special, but you need someone to believe in you. You need that one opportunity to prove yourself. So you get your demo to the game through his barber, and you wait. You hope. You pray this is your moment. And then nothing happens. Or worse, you hear that the game didn't like it. That rejection doesn't just hurt your career ambitions, it hurts your soul. It makes you question yourself. It makes you wonder if you're as good as you think you are. It plants seeds of doubt that can destroy an artist's confidence before they even get started. But Kendrick didn't let that rejection break him. He channeled it into motivation. He documented the pain in his music. He turned that betrayal into fuel. And that's what makes this story so powerful. Kendrick could have given up after the game rejected him. He could have believed the narrative that he wasn't good enough, but instead he kept pushing, kept grinding, kept perfecting his craft until he became undeniable. There's something deeply emotional about listening to Last Real Niga Alive now with the context of everything Kendrick achieved afterward. You can hear the hunger in his voice. You can hear the disappointment. You can hear a young artist trying to make sense of why people who should support him keep disappearing. And you realize that every obstacle Kendrick faced, every betrayal, every rejection became part of the story that made him legendary. The game probably doesn't even remember rejecting Kendrick's demo. It was probably just another day for him, another random tape from another random kid. But for Kendrick, that moment mattered. It shaped his journey. It became part of his testimony. And now, 16 years later, that moment is destroying the game's credibility. That's the tragedy in all this. The game had the chance to be remembered as the person who discovered Kendrick Lamar. He could have been the mentor who helped shape a Pulitzer Prize winner. He could have been celebrated alongside Dr. Dre and TDE as someone who recognized and nurtured greatness. Instead, he's going to be remembered as the insecure rapper who rejected Kendrick out of fear and jealousy, then tried to lie about it 16 years later. And the most emotional part? Kendrick still showed love on that 2009 track. He said, "I love him for that," when talking about the game taking him on tour. Even after the rejection, even after the disappointment, Kendrick acknowledged the small gesture. That shows character. That shows maturity. That shows Kendrick never wanted beef. He just wanted honesty. But the game couldn't give him honesty. The game had to rewrite history. And now Kendrick's forced to let the world hear the real story. Not because he wanted to destroy the game, but because the game kept lying, and Kendrick had no choice but to expose the truth. That's what makes this moment so devastating. It didn't have to be this way.
Now, let's dive even deeper into the evidence. Because the more you examine this situation, the more layers of calculated strategy you discover. Punch's involvement in resurfacing this track isn't just casual commentary. This is Top Dog Entertainment's president making an official statement. That's a declaration from Kendrick's camp that they're done playing nice with the game's lies. Think about the timing of when Punch decided to publicly endorse this 2009 track. This didn't happen randomly. This happened right as the game was running his mouth on social media, claiming he wanted to sign Kendrick, claiming he opened doors for him. Punch watched the game spread those lies to hundreds of thousands of people, and he said, "Enough." He pulled out the nuclear option, the original documentation from Kendrick himself. That's not just defending Kendrick, that's destroying the game's entire narrative with primary source evidence. In hip-hop, when your opponent has receipts, especially receipts from 16 years ago that you didn't even know existed, the battle is over. There's no coming back from that. Let's analyze the actual content of Last Real Nigga Alive even more closely, because every line is loaded with meaning when you know the full context. Kendrick wasn't just venting on this track, he was creating a historical record. He was documenting names, dates, specific interactions, specific emotions. He was building a case that would be bulletproof years later. Kendrick mentions giving his tape to Jamie the barber. That's a specific person. That's not vague, that's verifiable. Fans have already tracked down who Jamie is. They found old photos of the game with his barber. They're building a complete timeline of exactly when and how Kendrick's demo reached the game's hands. That level of specificity is what makes Kendrick's account credible. Compare that to the game's version of events. The game says he wanted to sign Kendrick, but provides zero details. No specific timeline, no specific interactions, just vague claims with no evidence. Meanwhile, Kendrick provided a play-by-play of exactly what happened, complete with emotional context and specific people involved.
Online investigators are also connecting this 2009 track to other moments in Kendrick's catalog where he might be referencing the game. They're going through Section 80, looking for subliminals. They're analyzing lines from Overly Dedicated. They're convinced Kendrick has been burying references to the game's betrayal throughout his entire discography, and we just didn't catch them until now. One Reddit thread broke down a potential reference on Ab-Soul's outro, where Kendrick talks about people who showed fake love early in his career. Fans swear he's talking about the game, and now that we know about the 2009 track, those lines hit completely different. Kendrick might have been sending subliminal shots for over a decade, and the game was too blind to notice. There's also the question of what else Kendrick documented in his unreleased vault. TDE is known for sitting on thousands of unreleased Kendrick songs. What if there are more tracks like Last Real Nigga alive buried in that archive? What if Kendrick has documented beef with other rappers who crossed him, and those tracks are just waiting for the right moment to surface? That possibility is terrifying for anyone in the industry who ever did Kendrick dirty, because if this is how he operates, if he's been documenting every betrayal for 16 years and saving it for moments like this, then nobody is safe. Kendrick has turned his music catalog into a weapon, and he can deploy it whenever necessary. Let's also talk about how the hip-hop community is reacting to this evidence. Major influencers, podcasters, and journalists are all discussing the 2009 track now. Complex wrote an article breaking down the lyrics. Joe Budden's podcast dedicated an entire segment to analyzing what this means for the game's credibility. Academics is calling it the most strategic exposure he's ever seen in hip-hop. Even casual fans who don't follow rap beefs closely are paying attention because this story is just too wild to ignore. The idea that Kendrick had a smoking gun track hidden for 16 years and only now is it coming to light? That's movie-level drama. That's the kind of long-game strategy that makes Kendrick look like a genius and the game look like a fool. And here's another crucial piece of evidence: the game's own behavior over the past few weeks. He's been obsessively talking about Kendrick on social media, bringing up old stories, trying to insert himself into Kendrick's narrative. Why? Because the game is desperate for relevance. He sees Kendrick's name trending and thinks he can ride that wave, but he miscalculated badly. He thought Kendrick wouldn't respond or provide receipts. He thought he could rewrite history without consequences. He was wrong. The game's social media posts from the past month are now being archived and analyzed frame by frame. Fans are screenshotting every claim he made, comparing them to what Kendrick said in 2009, and highlighting the contradictions. The game claimed he wanted to sign Kendrick. Kendrick's track says the game rejected his demo. The game claimed he opened doors. Kendrick's track says the game disappeared after the tour. Every single claim the game made is contradicted by Kendrick's testimony from 2009. That's not just being caught in one lie, that's being caught in multiple lies, all at once, with documented evidence disproving each one. The game's reputation in hip-hop is finished. His reputation in hip-hop is destroyed, and it's all because Kendrick played the long game and kept receipts. Folks online are calling this the Kendrick Lamar masterclass in strategic warfare. He didn't respond to the game with a diss track. He didn't even need to. He just let TDE's Punch remind the world that the truth was already documented 16 years ago. That's efficiency. That's precision. That's the mindset of someone who's always 3 steps ahead.
This whole situation gets even crazier when you realize this isn't the first time the game tried to attach himself to someone else's success. Let's talk about his pattern of behavior, because understanding the game's history makes this Kendrick situation make even more sense. The game has built a career on name-dropping legends and inserting himself in the narratives that don't belong to him. Go back and listen to any Game album. Count how many times he mentions Tupac, Biggie, Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Jay-Z, Nas. The man drops legendary names like he's trying to borrow their greatness by association. He positions himself as the West Coast torchbearer, but he never earned that title through his music alone. He earned it through proximity to legends and constant self-promotion.
Look at how the game handled his beef with 50 Cent and G-Unit. When that situation exploded, the game made sure to publicize every single detail, keep himself in the headlines, and use that conflict to stay relevant for years. He turned beef into a marketing strategy, and it worked for a while because people paid attention. But eventually, fans got tired of the constant trauma. Then there's the Meek Mill situation. The game inserted himself into the Drake versus Meek beef for no reason other than attention. He started throwing shots, trying to create a storyline where he was relevant to that conflict, but nobody asked for his involvement. It was pure clout chasing, and hip-hop fans saw through it. Same thing with 6ix9ine. The game engaged with Tekashi when Tekashi was at his peak controversy. He knew associating with 6ix9ine would generate headlines, and he was willing to compromise his credibility for that attention. That tells you everything about the game's priorities. He values relevancy over respect. So when you look at the game now trying to claim credit for Kendrick's rise, it's just the latest example of his pattern. He sees the biggest name in hip-hop and thinks, how can I attach myself to this story? He doesn't care about honesty. He cares about staying in the conversation by any means necessary. Meanwhile, let's talk about how TDE operates because the contrast is stark. Top Dog Entertainment built their reputation on authenticity. They didn't rush Kendrick's career, they let him develop naturally. They supported artists like Schoolboy Q, Ab-Soul, J-Rock, and SZA without exploiting them for quick cash. TDE plays the long game, and that's why their artists have longevity and respect. Punch's decision to publicly support the 2009 track shows that TDE doesn't play about their artists' legacies. When someone tries to rewrite history and diminish what Kendrick accomplished, TDE steps in with facts. That's loyalty. That's integrity. That's the difference between a label that cares about legacy versus someone like the game who only cares about clout. There are also side stories emerging about other artists the game allegedly tried to sabotage or undermine over the years. One Twitter thread blew up claiming the game blocked certain West Coast artists from opportunities because he felt threatened. Another story resurfaced about the game trying to stop a young rapper from working with a major producer. These are unverified claims, but the pattern is consistent. The game has a history of insecurity-driven behavior. Compare that to Kendrick's track record. Kendrick has elevated every artist he's worked with. He put Baby Keem on a bigger platform. He collaborated with West Coast legends like Snoop Dogg and Ice Cube with nothing but respect. He supported J. Cole publicly. He showed love to newer artists like Roddy Ricch and YG. Kendrick lifts people up instead of tearing them down out of jealousy. That's why this story resonates so deeply with hip-hop fans. It's not just about one beef. It's about two completely different approaches to legacy, success, and how you treat people on the way up. Kendrick represents integrity. The game represents insecurity. And right now, the world is watching insecurity get exposed and destroyed by someone who plays the game the right way. Another side angle that's blowing up online, fans are speculating whether Kendrick has similar documentation about other rappers who crossed him. There are theories that Kendrick has unreleased tracks about Drake that go back years before Euphoria and Not Like Us. There are theories he has old tracks addressing industry politics, label manipulation, and artists who secretly hated on him. If those tracks exist, Kendrick is sitting on a gold mine of content that could shift entire narratives. The hip-hop community is realizing that Kendrick isn't just a rapper, he's a historian. He's documenting the culture in real time through his music, and those documents become evidence when people try to lie about what really happened. That's a level of strategic thinking most artists don't have, and it's why Kendrick stays winning. And this story is still unfolding with way bigger implications than just one beef between two West Coast rappers. What we're seeing here is a masterclass in how the truth always comes out eventually, no matter how hard people try to rewrite history. The game spent 16 years building a false narrative, and it took one track resurfacing to destroy all of it. The bigger conversation happening right now is about accountability in hip-hop. For too long, artists have been able to lie about their come-up stories, exaggerate their influence, and claim credit for things they didn't do, all because there was no easy way to fact-check the past. But in the digital age, everything is documented. Every interview, every track, every social media post exists forever. And artists like Kendrick, who documented their truth from the beginning, now have bulletproof evidence when people try to lie. This changes how future generations of rappers will approach their careers. If you're an artist coming up right now, you're watching this situation and learning that you need to document your truth as it happens, because someday someone might try to rewrite your story and you'll need receipts to defend yourself. Kendrick just showed everyone the blueprint for how to do that. There's also a conversation about mentorship and how established artists treat rising talent. The Game had an opportunity to be a real mentor to Kendrick and fumbled it because of insecurity. That's a cautionary tale for every veteran artist in every genre. When you see someone younger than you with undeniable talent, you have two choices: embrace them and help them grow, or sabotage them out of fear. One choice builds a legacy of respect. The other builds a legacy of bitterness. Dr. Dre chose to embrace Kendrick, and now Dre is celebrated as one of the key figures in Kendrick's rise. The Game chose insecurity, and now he's being exposed as an obstacle rather than a supporter. That choice defines how you'll be remembered, and the Game is learning that lesson the hard way. The internet culture aspect of this is also fascinating. Hip-hop fans on Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube have become investigative journalists. They're fact-checking every claim, pulling up old footage, cross-referencing timelines, and building comprehensive breakdowns of who's telling the truth. The Game couldn't survive in this environment because lies don't work anymore. The crowdsourced investigation culture means someone will always find the receipts. This situation is also a warning for anybody who constantly chases relevance through controversy. The Game spent the last decade inserting himself into beefs, name-dropping legends, and doing anything for attention. But clout chasing has a shelf life. Eventually, people see through it. Eventually, you run out of people willing to engage with your antics, and when that happens, you're left with nothing but a damaged reputation and a legacy built on lies. What Kendrick is showing us is the alternative. Build a legacy through excellence. Create music that speaks for itself. Treat people with respect. Document your truth. And when someone tries to tear you down with lies, the work you've already done will defend you. You won't need to clap back with a diss track. You won't need to argue on social media. You just let the receipts speak. That's power. That's legacy. That's how you win in the long run. The final implication here is about karma. The Game rejected Kendrick in 2009 when Kendrick needed support. Now, 16 years later, Kendrick is at the height of his power, and the Game is desperate for relevance. Kendrick doesn't even have to engage directly. He just has to let Punch remind the world what really happened, and the Game's entire narrative crumbles. That's poetic justice. That's the universe balancing itself out. And every artist watching this story is learning that how you treat people on the way up determines how they'll treat you on the way down.
So where does the Game go from here? Because let's be honest, his options are extremely limited at this point. He's been caught in multiple lies, exposed by primary source evidence from 16 years ago, and his credibility in hip-hop is destroyed. He can't deny the 2009 track exists because it's public. He can't deny what Kendrick said because it's Kendrick's own words. And he can't claim the track is fake because Punch officially endorsed it. The Game essentially has three paths forward, and all of them are bad for him. Option 1, he admits he lied, apologizes, and accepts the L. But the Game's ego is way too big for that. He's never been the type to admit when he's wrong. His entire persona is built on bravado and talking like he's untouchable. Admitting defeat would destroy his image, which is all he has left at this point. Option 2, he doubles down on the lies and tries to fight back with his own version of events. But how do you fight documented evidence? The Game could release a statement, record a response track, or go on a podcast tour trying to defend himself. But without receipts of his own, he's just screaming into the void. And every time he speaks, people will point to Kendrick's 2009 track and say, "Kendrick already told us the truth 16 years ago." Option 3, he goes silent and hopes this blows over. But in today's internet culture, silence is interpreted as guilt. If the Game doesn't respond, people will assume he has no defense because he knows he's been caught lying. And the longer he stays quiet, the more the narrative solidifies that Kendrick destroyed him so thoroughly that he couldn't even respond. None of those options lead to the Game coming out of this looking good. He's in a lose-lose-lose situation, and it's entirely his own fault. He chose to lie about Kendrick. He chose to try to rewrite history, and now he's paying the price. Hip-hop insiders are speculating that the game might try to pivot and claim this was all strategy to get attention for a new album or project. He might try to spin this as, "I knew Kendrick would respond, and now everybody's talking about both of us." But that spin won't work, because the game looks terrible in this situation. This isn't the kind of attention that helps your career. This is the kind of attention that ends careers. There's also speculation about whether Kendrick will release more material addressing the game. Some fans think Kendrick has a full diss track in the vault ready to go if the game keeps talking. Others think Kendrick will stay silent because the 2009 track already did all the work. Personally, I think Kendrick is done engaging. He let Punch handle it, the receipts are public, and Kendrick can move on knowing he completely dismantled the game's lies without even recording a new verse. The conspiracy theories are wild right now. Some fans believe Kendrick has been planning this moment for years. They think he always knew the game would eventually try to claim credit for his success, so he strategically left that 2009 track as a trap waiting to be sprung. They're calling it 4D chess and saying Kendrick is the most calculated artist in hip-hop history. Other theories suggest TDE has an entire archive of receipts on different industry figures, and they're willing to expose anyone who tries to rewrite history or disrespect their artists. If that's true, this could just be the beginning of TDE going scorched earth on people who've been lying about their role in Kendrick's rise. One thing is certain, the game's legacy is permanently damaged. Years from now, when people talk about the game, this moment will come up. They'll remember him as the insecure rapper who rejected Kendrick Lamar, lied about it for 16 years, and got exposed with his own words. That's not how anyone wants to be remembered. But that's the bed the game made, and now he has to lie in it. The final speculation is whether this impacts the game's ability to work in hip-hop moving forward. Will producers want to work with him? Will features still collaborate? Will then use booking for shows? When your credibility is destroyed, the industry starts treating you differently, and the game might be learning that lesson in real time. This is what happens when you challenge someone who's been documenting everything. Kendrick played the long game, kept receipts, and demolished the game's entire narrative without breaking a sweat. That's legendary behavior, and hip-hop will be talking about this moment for decades.
Stay locked in because this story is far from over. More details are dropping every single day. More old tracks are being analyzed. More industry insiders are commenting, and reports say the game might be preparing some kind of response. Though, honestly, I don't know what he could possibly say at this point that would save his reputation. What we're witnessing right now is one of the most strategic exposures in hip-hop history. Kendrick Lamar didn't just win a battle, he obliterated an opponent using evidence from 16 years ago that nobody even knew existed. That's not just winning, that's domination. That's showing the entire industry that he's been playing chess while everyone else played checkers. So drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear from you. Do you think the game can recover from this, or is his credibility permanently destroyed? Do you believe Kendrick has more hidden tracks in the vault exposing other rappers who crossed him? And do you think TDE is about to go on a full exposure campaign against everyone who's been lying about their role in Kendrick's success? Let me know what you think, because this conversation is blowing up everywhere. The hip-hop community is divided. Some people feel bad for the game. Others are saying he deserves everything he's getting because he lied for 16 years. I want to hear where you stand on this situation. Make sure you smash that like button if this video broke down the situation in a way that made sense. Hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so you don't miss a single update, because I'm covering every twist and turn in this story as it develops. We're living through hip-hop history right now, and I'm bringing you all the details, all the analysis, all the receipts. I appreciate every single one of you for rocking with me, for engaging with the content, for being part of this community.
Your support means everything, and I don't take it for granted. This channel exists because you show up, and I'm committed to bringing you the realest breakdowns in the game. I'll see you in the next video, where we're gonna dive even deeper into this situation. I've got interviews lined up, more evidence to analyze, and insider information that's about to make this story even crazier. You do not want to miss what's coming next. Stay safe out there, keep your circles tight, and remember, the truth always comes out eventually. You can lie for a day, a year, even 16 years. But when someone has the receipts, when someone documented everything from the beginning, those lies will catch up to you. That's the lesson here. That's what the game is learning the hard way. And that's what Kendrick Lamar just taught the entire hip-hop world. Peace out. Stay tuned and get ready for the next chapter in this insane story.